Chapter 8 Photosynthesis Figure 8.1 This world map shows Earth's distribution of photosynthetic activity determined by chlorophyll concentrations. On land, chlorophyll is evident from terrestrial plants, and within oceanic zones, from chlorophyll from phytoplankton. Credit. Modification of work by CYFS Project, NASA, Goddard Space Flight Center and ORBIMAGE. Introduction. The metabolic processes in all organisms, from bacteria to humans, require energy. To get this energy, many organisms access stored energy by eating, that is, by ingesting other organisms. But where does the stored energy in food originate? All of this energy can be traced back to photosynthesis. Chapter Outline 8.1 Overview of Photosynthesis 8.2 The light-dependent reactions of photosynthesis 8.3 Using light energy to make organic molecules 8.1 Overview of photosynthesis By the end of this section, you will be able to do the following. Explain the significance of photosynthesis to other living organisms. Describe the main structures involved in photosynthesis. Identify the substrates and products of photosynthesis. Photosynthesis is essential to all life on Earth. Both plants and animals depend on it. It is the only biological process that can capture energy that originates from sunlight and converts it into chemical compounds, carbohydrates, that every organism uses to power its metabolism. It is also a source of oxygen necessary for many living organisms. In brief, the energy of sunlight is captured to energize electrons, whose energy is then stored in the covalent bonds of sugar molecules. How long-lasting and stable are those covalent bonds? The energy extracted today by the burning of coal and petroleum products represents sunlight energy captured and stored by photosynthesis 350 to 200 million years ago during the Carboniferous period. Plants, algae, and a group of bacteria called cyanobacteria are the only organisms capable of performing photosynthesis, figure 8.2. Because they use light to manufacture their own food, they are called photoautotrophs, literally, self-feeders using light. Other organisms, such as animals, fungi, and most other bacteria, are termed heterotrophs, other feeders, because they must rely on the sugars produced by photosynthetic organisms for their energy needs. A third very interesting group of bacteria synthesize sugars, not by using sunlight's energy, but by extracting energy from inorganic chemical compounds. For this reason, they are referred to as chemoautotrophs. Figure 8.2 Photoautotrophs including a. Plants, b. Algae, and c. Cyanobacteria synthesize their organic compounds via photosynthesis using sunlight as an energy source. Cyanobacteria and planktonic algae can grow over enormous areas in water, at times completely covering the surface. In a. Deep sea vent, chemoautotrophs, such as these, e. Thermophilic bacteria, capture energy from inorganic compounds to produce organic compounds. The ecosystem surrounding the vents has a diverse array of animals, such as tubeworms, crustaceans, and octopuses that derive energy from the bacteria. Credit A. Modification of work by Steve Hillebrand, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. Credit B. Modification of work by Eutrophication and Hypoxia, Flickr. Credit C. Modification of work by NASA. Credit D. University of Washington, NOAA. Credit E. Modification of work by Mark Amend, West Coast and Polar Regions Undersea Research Center, UAF, NOAA. The importance of photosynthesis is not just that it can capture sunlight's energy. After all, a lizard sunning itself on a cold day can use the sun's energy to warm up in a process called behavioral thermoregulation. In contrast, photosynthesis is vital because it evolved as a way to store the energy from solar radiation. The 206 Chapter 8, Photosynthesis Access for free at openstax.org. Photo part. To energy in the carbon-carbon bonds of carbohydrate molecules, the synthesis part. Those carbohydrates are the energy source that heterotrophs use to power the synthesis of ATP via respiration. Therefore, photosynthesis powers 99% of Earth's ecosystems. When a top predator, such as a wolf, preys on a deer, figure 8.3, the wolf is at the end of an energy path that went from nuclear reactions on the surface of the sun, to visible light, to photosynthesis, to vegetation, to deer, and finally to the wolf. Figure 8.3 The energy stored in carbohydrate molecules from photosynthesis passes through the food chain. The predator that eats these deer receives a portion of the energy that originated in the photosynthetic vegetation that the deer consumed. Credit: Modification of work by Steve Van Riper, U.S. Fish and Wildlife Service. Main structures and summary of photosynthesis. Photosynthesis is a multi-step process that requires specific wavelengths of visible sunlight, carbon dioxide, which is low in energy, and water as substrates, figure 8.4. After the process is complete, it releases oxygen and produces glyceraldehyde 3-phosphate, G3P, as well as simple carbohydrate molecules, high in energy, that can then be converted into glucose, sucrose, or any of dozens of other sugar molecules. These sugar molecules contain energy and the energized carbon that all living things need to survive. Figure 8.4. Photosynthesis uses solar energy, carbon dioxide, and water to produce energy-storing carbohydrates. Oxygen is generated as a waste product of photosynthesis. 8.1 Overview of photosynthesis. 207 The following is the chemical equation for photosynthesis. Figure 8.5. Figure 8.5 The basic equation for photosynthesis is deceptively simple. In reality, the process takes place in many steps involving intermediate reactants and products. Glucose, the primary energy source in cells, is made from 2,3-carbon G3 petaseconds. Although the equation looks simple, the many steps that take place during photosynthesis are actually quite complex. Before learning the details of how photoautotrophs turn sunlight into food, it is important to become familiar with the structures involved. Basic photosynthetic structures in plants. Photosynthesis generally takes place in leaves, which consist of several layers of cells. The process of photosynthesis occurs in a middle layer called the mesophyll. The gas exchange of carbon dioxide and oxygen occurs through small, regulated openings called stomata, singular, stoma, which also play roles in the regulation of gas exchange and water balance. The stomata are typically located on the underside of the leaf, which helps to minimize water loss due to high temperatures on the upper surface of the leaf. Each stoma is flanked by guard cells that regulate the opening and closing of the stomata by swelling or shrinking in response to osmotic changes. In all autotrophic eukaryotes, photosynthesis takes place inside an organelle called a chloroplast. For plants, chloroplast-containing cells exist mostly in the mesophyll. Chloroplasts have a double membrane envelope, composed of an outer membrane and an inner membrane, and are ancestrally derived from ancient free-living cyanobacteria. Within the chloroplast are stacked, disc-shaped structures called thylakoids. Embedded in the thylakoid membrane is chlorophyll, a pigment, molecule that absorbs light, responsible for the initial interaction between light and plant material, and numerous proteins that make up the electron transport chain. The thylakoid membrane encloses an internal space called the thylakoid lumen. As shown in Figure 8.6, a stack of thylakoids is called a granum, and the liquid-filled space surrounding the granum is called stroma or bed, not to be confused with stoma or mouth, an opening on the leaf epidermis. Visual connection. Figure 8.6 Photosynthesis takes place in chloroplasts, which have an outer membrane and an inner membrane. Stacks of thylakoids called grana form a third membrane layer. On a hot, dry day, the guard cells of plants close their stomata to conserve water. What impact will this have on photosynthesis? 208 Chapter 8, Photosynthesis. Access for free at openstax.org. The two parts of photosynthesis. Photosynthesis takes place in two sequential stages: the light-dependent reactions and the light-independent reactions. In the light-dependent reactions, energy from sunlight is absorbed by chlorophyll and that energy is converted into stored chemical energy. In the light-independent reactions, the chemical energy harvested during the light-dependent reactions drives the assembly of sugar molecules from carbon dioxide. Therefore, although the light-independent reactions do not use light as a reactant, they require the products of the light-dependent reactions to function. In addition, however, several enzymes of the light-independent reactions are activated by light. The light-dependent reactions utilize certain molecules to temporarily store the energy. These are referred to as energy carriers. The energy carriers that move energy from light-dependent reactions to light-independent reactions can be thought of as full, because they are rich in energy. After the energy is released, the empty energy carriers return to the light-dependent reaction to obtain more energy. Figure 8.7 illustrates the components inside the chloroplast where the light-dependent and light-independent reactions take place. Figure 8.7 photosynthesis takes place in two stages: light-dependent reactions and the Calvin cycle. Light-dependent reactions, which take place in the thylakoid membrane, use light energy to make ATP and NADPH. The Calvin cycle, which takes place in the stroma, uses energy derived from these compounds to make G3P from CO2. Link to learning. Click the link, http://openstax.org/l/photosynthesis to learn more about photosynthesis.